Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Dawn Bowerman with Blue Chip Marketing, and I'm here at Sounds for Life with Dr. Ramona Stein. Welcome.
Good morning.
And it's a nice, sunny, almost day, hopefully melting some of that snow that's out there that we got hit with. So
Yeah.
we're looking forward to that. We had a good week last week. We had the demonstration with Kristen, and it was just great, so that went real well. So I'm looking forward to that coming out and people being able to see that. And today we're going to be talking about the impact of hearing loss, correct?
Right. So more of the psychosocial aspects of hearing loss and how it affects people rather than just, I have a hearing loss, I can't hear. There are other impacts that people need to know about.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about what people can look for or what it's about?
Sure. When I talk about, well, first of all, the information that I'm going to be covering, I wanted to say, is from an online article by Dr. Samuel Trykin, and the title of that was What Psychologists Need to Know About the Impact of Hearing Loss. So first of all, I want to just remind people that 80% of people who have hearing loss don't do anything about it. And I think that's just important to keep in mind as I go through this information. So first of all, I want to talk about two major ways that hearing loss can affect a person. First of all, it interferes with their knowledge of what's going on around them. So hearing loss interferes with access to important environmental information that's really critical for a person's safety. So things like smoke alarms, fire alarms, car horns. If they're in a parking lot, they might not hear a car horn and get out of the way, which could, definitely endanger them. Or if they're in a dangerous situation and somebody is shouting to them, they just might not hear that.
Or horns beeping, all that kind of
yes,
stuff.
Yes, exactly. And this is what I'm going to spend a little bit more time on today. Hearing loss can also affect a person's social communication and their relationships. And if a person has frequent communication breakdowns with the people they communicate with, the result can be weakening relationships, and also it can create distance between the two people. And, part of the reason maybe for the 80% statistic that I gave early on could be because people who have hearing loss, untreated hearing loss, a lot of times don't relate the problems that they're having to the hearing loss.
Sure.
So they may not connect the fact that they're fatigued, they're depressed, they're anxious, that they withdraw from others. They might not even think that has anything to do with hearing loss.
And it's gradual, so they probably don't even know that they have that hearing loss.
Right.
Yeah.
It occurs gradually, so yes, you're right. Or a lot of times it occurs gradually. So some more serious consequences of hearing loss that people need to be aware of. It could be something very abrupt, like the loss of a job, and or a loss of marriage or relationship, breakup of marriage or relationship. And that's kind of, like I said, an abrupt occurrence. But over time, there are also some difficulties. So these things generally occur, as I said, over time, and they're more minor, but they do add up. Things like feeling ostracized, feeling rejected, suffering bullying or abuse or neglect. And either of those, the short-term or the long-term situations, can result in some serious health issues, including post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
So other consequences of hearing loss, I already mentioned a couple of these, but if you have untreated hearing loss, you might become chronically depressed, nervous, anxious. You might feel angry. You might feel marginalized in your family situation or in your work situation, and you might avoid people, which leads to loneliness. So you asked at the beginning, how do you know? What are the signs of hearing loss? So I am going to list some indicators, and these are pretty reliable indicators. But just having one of these doesn't mean you have a hearing loss. So if you experience, or someone experiences a number of these, and especially if they occur a lot of times, like often, then you pretty much most likely have a hearing loss. So frequently misunderstanding words, frequently asking people to repeat themselves, inappropriately responding to what is said, failing to respond to what is said, difficulty understanding in groups, avoiding social situations, blaming people for not speaking clearly, being defensive about communication problems, turning up the radio or TV much too loud, having a puzzled expression when you're listening, intently watching a speaker's mouth, having a strained expression around the eyes while listening, turning the head to one side to hear better, and talking too loudly or very softly. So, as I said, those are some pretty reliable indicators. And the next thing I wanted to just touch on briefly, and there are more
Right,
indicators, but these are just, some that I wanted to definitely highlight. And there are some myths and misconceptions about hearing loss, and there are many, but I do just want to touch on a few of them.
Sure.
So one is the hearing aid misconception, and that is the idea that once you get hearing aids, your hearing is normal again, and that is not the case. A lot of times people equate hearing aids to eyeglasses. So when you go to the optometrist, you come out of there with new lenses and you can see, most times very well. Hearing aids don't really work like that. There is definitely an improvement, but it depends on how long you've had an untreated hearing loss and the degree of your hearing loss. So the second misconception is the lip reading misconception, and that's the misconception that if you lose your hearing, all of a sudden your other senses become more acute, like your vision would become more acute, thereby allowing you to lip read or speech read a speaker. There aren't a lot of people who can lip read or speech read. It's very difficult to do, and one of the reasons it's so difficult is because so many of the sounds look the same on a person's lips. So you're really, there's a lot of guessing going on.
Yeah. I've seen people that are eventually the family members that have gotten hearing aids. What I did notice is when people are speaking, you can watch their lips move because they're trying to move to hear what you're saying. I think more
Right.
so than lip reading. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. The sign language misconception, and that is the misconception that if you have a hearing loss, maybe instead of getting hearing aids, you'll just learn sign language. And the problem with that is sign language is very difficult to learn. And it's like any other language. If you don't use it, you lose it.
Plus, not everybody knows sign language.
Not
so you're
everybody
limited.
knows,
Yeah.
exactly. And, realistically, your family, your friends, your coworkers, that's going to be a pretty hard sell to get them to learn sign language to communicate with you. Maybe not so much the family, but other people. The last misconception that I want to talk about is that professionals understand hearing loss and its psychosocial aspects. People like physicians, psychologists, even some audiologists may not really understand what a person with hearing loss is going through. And basically, you need to have some direct experience with someone who has a hearing loss and really listen to what they're going through in order to try to understand and help them,
Right.
with the hearing loss.
And on that note, with physicians and some of the other professionals, it also is something that they really don't test, correct?
Yes, and if they do test, it's a very, it can be a very unsophisticated test. So the best thing to do is either have a screening or have a complete hearing test. If a screening is more for people who don't really have a lot of problems. If you know you have a hearing loss, if your family tells you, your friends tell you, you really need to have a full evaluation.
Right. And I know I've talked to some people too that they say, they're not experiencing any of this, and we've talked about this in the past, is it's still a good baseline because like Dr. Stein said earlier, it can be gradual. So you may not even know it, and the professional audiologist is going to pick up on that if you're going there every year to get this physical. Is that what you or this hearing test? Is that what you recommend once a year, or?
Well, it depends. If a person comes in and has a screening and has maybe just a very mild loss, generally we tell them to come back every 3 years.
Oh, 3 years. Okay.
But if a person does have a significant hearing loss, anytime you fail a screening, you really need to go for the full evaluation, and then the screening is kind of out of the picture at that point.
Right.
And anytime a person notices a change in their hearing, tinnitus or ringing in their ears, if they have never had it and they all of a sudden get it, or if there's been a change in it, or if they have a change in their dizziness or balance, or start experiencing balance or dizziness issues, then they really need to come in right away for an evaluation.
Right, and I think you really will start to notice the signs. One of the ones that are pretty evident is the withdrawal. And these folks just withdraw because they feel people are being aggressive, because the first thing we tend to do is talk louder.
Right.
Which you should talk slower, not louder.
Right.
That's my understanding. Those were the great information. Now, what I also picked up as Dr. Stein was talking is the importance of meeting with someone like yourself, who has the background, the knowledge, and the experience to help you kind of understand if you have a hearing loss and what all the necessary steps are and options are. Again, we stress all the time, there's a lot of options in hearing aids. It's just based on your lifestyle, your hearing loss, things like that. So it's very important that you come to a place like Sounds for Life and meet with one of the audiologists here, or wherever you're located, because it's important, I think, to have the professional. So that was great. Well, thank you so much. We look forward to next time, and thank you all for joining myself and Dr. Stein here at Sounds for Life. Dawn Bowerman, Blue Chip Marketing. Have a wonderful day.